Welcome to Just Another Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. Today, I'm joined by Mike McMahon of College Hockey News and the Mack Report. How's it going, Mike?
It's going well. How about you? We haven't done this in a while.
I know. It's like, I've like looking back on different photos of me doing like podcasts and recordings back in Massachusetts. Like, there's a couple where I'm like, oh, Mike was on the show with us.
Yeah, we did a couple, I know, like in the lobby at the Songa
Mhm.
Center, for sure. I remember that.
Which for like the first like foray into podcasting and recording is not the easiest. I figured out afterwards, like live recording in a lobby
Yeah,
was like
with like
the
500
craziest
people
thing.
there.
Yeah, was the craziest thing. And they're like, "Hey, do you want to be on the speakers?" I'm like, "Ah, God, I don't know if I wanted that." But yeah, so anybody knows. I mean, ran a website called Mill City Sports in Massachusetts, covering UMass Lowell mainly, Hockey East, other sports as well, MMA. Mike and I became friends then because we met each other in the press box, and Mike's still doing that. You 15 years or so, 13 years,
Almost. This is 14. I started in
14 years.
06. I
Okay,
graduated in
so
06. So
14
if
years of
there's a
covering
season this year, this will be 14.
covering. Excuse me, mostly college hockey, but you do everything pretty much for Mack Report, right? Like everything
Yeah.
Merrimack College has to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and then when I was with the Tribune, I did literally a little bit of everything from
yeah.
Merrimack to high school sports to UFC to whatever needed to be done on a particular day.
Well, that's what's funny about people asking, like, well, you covered sports. What'd you cover? I'm like, well, anything I really wanted to, honestly, because it's like at the time when you run your own blog, it's like, oh, I want to cover the UFC. Let's apply for credentials and see what happens. And like the UFC is not a super easy thing to get into to cover for sports. Like they're like the approval process is not like anybody can get in there. I mean, college hockey, let's be honest. If someone's like, hey, can I sit in the press box? Someone's like, we have room. Let's put
For
you
the
in
most
there.
part, yeah.
But like the UFC is like one of those things that I was like, I don't know if I can get in there. And I did two events. I did the Boston one and I did the Bangor one.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty intense because I saw McGregor beat what was his name? Seaver. No, not Seaver. Was it Seaver? Who's
I don't remember. I don't think I was at
Boston? It was Boston. It was right before. Basically, McGregor beat. I forget his. Oh, Dennis Seaver. Dennis Seaver.
That. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he
I
got
don't
that.
think I was at. I don't think I covered that show. I think I was watching.
He got to beat because he beat Seaver. He was able to fight Aldo.
Yeah.
Aldo, whatever.
And then beat Aldo in 35 seconds.
So it was fun. I did some PGA Tour events. I did MMA events. I did a couple of Bruins games. Mostly college hockey though. So that's why.
Yeah.
I thought, Mike's a college hockey expert that I know. And so let's bring him on. Let's talk some college hockey because maybe there'll be a season this year. Maybe they won't. But let's talk a little bit about it.
I think so. I think
see what shirt I wore?
I do. I saw that. Yeah.
2013 champions.
I do think we'll get something. I don't know what it's going to look like or when it's going to be, but I do think there'll be something. I'm hoping anyway.
Which is funny because like I was thinking back, looking at some stuff before I came on here, and I first saw my first UMass Lowell game in person in 2011. I was a season ticket holder for the Riverhawks, and I fell in love, and I started writing a blog, View from 123, and then I morphed that into something else. And first time in a press box was 2012, and then the Hockey East champions in 2013 were the UMass Lowell Riverhawks. So like, and the year prior that was 2010 when they won 5 games.
Yeah, right before Norm was hired, right?
And so I was like, oh, cool. This is an awesome team. This is unbelievable. Like not knowing their history yet. And then they won, 3 championships in 5 Hockey East championships in 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I move and I come back to Bangor and they haven't made the Hockey East championship since. And so it must have been me in the press box there. I mean,
it makes sense to me.
Oh, because you could say Norm was the one that made him win the championships, but let's be honest, he's still there. So
yeah, there was only one constant thing. Your shirt reminds me. Let me show. Do I have it down here? This is something that I don't think exists anywhere because it never happened. But I found this on eBay.
Oh my! How did someone get that?
I have no idea. I assume they had them made for if they were to win the game.
But how did someone just steal it out of the locker room or something like that?
I found it on eBay randomly. My wife was in the hospital. She's fine. But she was she needed her gallbladder taken out. And I was just like in the waiting room scrolling through eBay. I had not been on the eBay app on my phone in probably a year. And I just like typed in Merrimack, and that was one of the first things that popped up. And I goes like, how do I not get this? Like, I don't care what it
year
was.
is it? Is it 2011 on that?
2011, yeah, that's when they played
Was
BC in the championship game.
BC, and that was they played Maine. Was it Maine coming up to it
They
too?
They beat Maine in the quarterfinals, the
Yeah,
series at Lawler. Yeah,
and that was Jordan Haywood was on the team.
he would
2011.
have been a freshman, I think,
Yeah,
that year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember because I became friends with him outside the school
Okay.
when I was working in Massachusetts. He was a friend of mine there, and so it was kind of funny to see him. And then he played for a couple more years after that. I had a signed puck here somewhere from him. Most of my
He
sports
just
memorabilia,
retired.
yeah, most of my memorabilia for UMass Lowell and stuff that's in a box somewhere. I just never got a chance to unpack it. But yeah, he's I haven't. I think I'm still friends with him on Facebook, but I haven't kept up with him.
Yeah, I
In
think he
years.
just maybe last year or may have been like this past spring that he officially retired. He's playing overseas for a while. He played a couple years in like the ECHL, and then I think he was in. I know he played in the UK his last year. I think he had a couple years in Germany and maybe Norway or something like that. But
I think Michael Budd just retired too from UMass Lowell. Did you hear that? He got caught with drugs, I think, over in Europe somewhere. Like they did some sort of drug test. He had cocaine in his system or something like that. So it's just like I remember covering alumni from UMass Lowell and like looking where they were. And then I'm like, oh, I wonder where these people are. And I was like, I just Googled some people and Michael Budd's name came up. And I was like, oh my God.
I always assume that most of those leagues are like a free for all where they don't really test or do anything like that.
I think he was in China too. I don't want to say Europe. He was over in playing in China. Those leagues that like that teams are just like horrible. Ice is horrible. Like it's just like, oh, I guess I can continue when I play hockey and be in China. I guess. I mean, if you're gonna be in a different country, you might as well play what you want to play and like hopefully at least make a living to the point where you can afford to live there.
Yeah. There was a Chinese team that was they were owned by like the same people that owned the San Jose Sharks at one point. They were called the China Sharks.
China Sharks. That sounds like some sort of like fake name you'd get on an NHL hockey game for the Xbox.
The only reason I even know they exist is because a former Merrimack player, same thing, like covering alumni, was their player coach one year. Steve McKenna, who played in the NHL.
That's a on your resumes, player coach, but where? The China Sharks.
Yeah, he was with the China Sharks. I'm gonna look him up now because he was with the China Sharks as a player coach, and then I think he was also the coach of like the Australian national team or something. Like the most random. Yeah, the China Sharks player coach 2008 and 2009, and he coached the Australian national team at the World Championships. And then he was a head coach in Italy for a few years. It doesn't look like he's done anything since 2013.
But that's also one of the crazy things about hockey in the sense that I don't think a lot of people who don't follow, like you and I, with following specific teams and being a beat reporter for a specific college hockey team, and we follow the alumni after they leave the school, that how worldwide hockey actually is. Like there's, other sports, soccer, basketball, things like that. But like hockey is everywhere now. Like it's in a lot of different countries. And you look at these obscure places these alumni are playing in, and you're trying to get statistics, and you're like, I don't even know if these are real statistics or not. Like I can't.
Because also some of them look made up. Like some of these leagues, you get a guy that's got like, oh, he's got 68 points in 14 games, and you're like, that can't be right.
That's a beer league, right? I mean, come on. But I mean, it's fun. I used to love the things, like some of the things I getting back into, like doing podcasting and stuff like this. It's like missing the weekly during the seasons being like, okay, let's refresh the stats and see what people are doing and see how good people are and see where the recruits are coming from and all that stuff. And it's like, I miss that aspect of it. It was a lot of work, and as you know, a lot of work, very little reward, except for personal reward that it's fun to do in a sense. But what would you have done this season or will you do if they don't have a hockey season?
I don't know. I do think they will have one. I think, my kids are older now. Yeah. So like my oldest is 10, my youngest is 8, and they're also playing hockey along with everything else in baseball. So like I'm real busy with them to the point where like I even missed for the first time last year. I missed a good chunk of games because I just had something going on with them. Oh, I needed to be at their hockey game or help coach their hockey game or whatever. And that stuff never got in the way when they were like 3 and 4 because they weren't doing the stuff. So I will still, I'm sure, personally be busy. That being said, I want there to be a hockey season.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a matter of what that's going to look like.
So as of right now, it's they say what? Sorry, November 20th is the idea, right around there.
Yeah. I keep hearing Thanksgiving. So
Okay.
the idea being with both, so the NCAA announced last week that basketball is going to start on the 25th. I think hockey will be right around the same time, maybe a little bit before. But the idea is most schools, I don't know, I don't think it's every school in the country, but most schools are sending their kids home at Thanksgiving and then not bringing them back for exams. So usually, obviously you go to Thanksgiving break, you come back the first week of December, you take a couple of exams, and then you go home for Christmas. You don't come back to the end of January. Well, now they're talking about exams for first semester being online. So these schools are going to send all the kids home November 20th, whatever comes close, whatever that like Tuesday is before Thanksgiving. And they're probably not going to come back until the beginning of February for the second semester. So for basketball and hockey specifically, you've got an opportunity to kind of create your own bubble. Like
In a sense, yeah.
you got your men's and women's hockey teams and your men's and women's basketball teams, and they're going to be the only ones on campus. So I think that's when they're going to try to squeeze in a lot of it. That's what everybody keeps telling me. So that they'll have, roughly 2.5 months to squeeze in conference games. I don't think they're going to do anything out of conference, but conference games. And then at that point, we'll be into February and March, and we'll see, well, what does the Hockey East tournament look like? I think there'll be a Hockey East. If there are games, I think there will be a Hockey East tournament and a Hockey East championship. It's a matter of, is it on campus or at the Garden? And is that as far as the season goes, or will they figure out a way to be able to do an NCAA tournament? They're already talking about doing an NCAA tournament with less teams. So maybe that's an option, but we'll see. I do think they're going to do something. And if they play, I think they'll at least go as far as conference championships.
Do you think they'll play the same way with like Friday and Saturday nights, or do you think they'll try to do 3 games a week, or like does it really matter? Like, I'm just wondering if they try to like really not cram it into the point where they overwork the student athletes, but like, is there a possibility there'll be like a Friday night game and a Sunday night game and a Wednesday night game, or do you think it's still going to be the Friday night, Saturday nights most of the time?
I don't know. I don't know. I do think one thing that someone did tell me is they may try to work it in so that you're playing all of your games against a particular team in a row. So, like, let's say you're going to play 4 games against BC, you're going to play 4 games against BC in a row, and then they can retest or whatever the student athletes before the next series or something like that. There has been some rumbling among some coaches that they may want to space out the games and kind of space them out into the middle of the week, especially where the kids aren't going to be taking classes at that point. And if the NHL, I think the NHL released something today about when they're going to start for next year, but the last I heard, it was going to be like December, maybe even first of the year, because the Stanley Cup Finals are going on right now. They still need to do a draft. They still need to do an off season with free agency and everything. So if you're going to have a network like Nesson that has a lot of openings, maybe that's an opportunity for Hockey East to kind of sneak in and say, look, well, we'll give you 1 game a week, like or 1 game a day, Monday to Saturday, or something like that, and space it out a little bit. The kids aren't taking classes, I think that's pretty easy to do. And I mean, basketball does it now. I mean, there's college basketball on ESPN every single night of the week,
Yeah.
and that's with classes going on and with significantly more travel than college hockey.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's ways to figure it out.
It's just an interesting aspect to see that like we're still talking about this in or almost October, in September, that we shut down, like my business at Orono Brewing Company shut down March 15th, and we opened back up July 1st, thinking that we're still talking about whether or not there's any sports in 2021. Because I mean, think about it. Yes, if they start November 25th, 24th, or whenever around there, it's only 1 month left in 2020. So in a sense, this is the 2020-2021 season, but really it's the 2021 season in a sense. But it's just interesting that we're still talking about this now.
And it's funny because like we had kind of internally at CHN on a Slack conversation, we were talking like back in March, what's this going to look like for next year? And me being naive was just like, in the fall, we're not going to worry about this in the fall. It's going to be over with in the fall. Like they're clearly, we'll be on to the next thing by the fall. This will be done with. We won't even be talking about this. Not really having any idea what we were getting into, just because I don't think anybody knew at the time. You know what I mean? Like
And we
I
still
knew it
don't
was
know.
bad. Yeah, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know that it was going to still be here in September or October because it's been a long time since I took high school history and learned about the Spanish flu. You know?
But I mean, so I'm guessing there's no fans. That's the consensus is no fans. I mean,
Yeah.
and then probably limited other things too. I'm guessing a lot of it's no, like they're not. I'm guessing there's not going to be a press box either. That's my theory. If you're not going to have fans in there, or if they do, it's like no actual interaction at all with the players. There's no post game press conference
Yeah,
kind of
I think
thing.
we'll be doing it like this.
Yeah,
Like how you and I are talking right now. You know,
and having your
coach goes
dog
to,
bark in the background. Have you
yeah.
seen that Anthony Davis one where he's like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
what's going on? There's a dog barking in the back."
I think they'll do it like, you know, coach goes into his office, gets on a Zoom call. But whether, I mean, they could do media in the buildings. If there's no fans, you know, I'm just thinking about it specifically from a Merrimack standpoint, but they also have the smallest building. It's, if you only had 20 or 25 media people there, you can say, okay, radio is going to get this luxury box and et cetera, space everybody out in separate seats within the arena, because you don't need to use the press box if there's nobody else in the building. The biggest thing I think with them bringing media onto campus is, I think that'll be allowed as long as there's no students, because each school is kind of creating their own atmosphere where they're testing, at least the kids that are living there, they're testing them pretty regularly. I don't know that they're going to want to bring a lot of outside people onto campus on a daily or weekly basis when it comes to athletic events. So as long like that November to February window when there's not going to be any other students on campus, I think that's when they may, like when media may have more access as far as getting to and from games. Once students are back in residency on campuses, I don't see many colleges being okay with just openly inviting people from the outside onto their campus.
Do you think that they, like with the watching games, you said Nesson and all that stuff, but there is all these streaming networks for each individual place. Like, you know, UMass had their own on GoRiverHawks.com. They had their own, like, you could watch the games and you pay for it. Is that something you think schools are going to like say, hey, it's open because you can't come to the games, or expect people to pay for it now because they can't come to the games to kind of help, you know, supplement some of the income they're losing?
Yeah, I think it'll be the latter. Just a guess. I mean, the Hockey East has also talked about trying to do something on their own as a league. So, like the NCHC has NCHC.TV, and you can go in and you can either buy individual games, or you could buy, I think you could buy a team pass, which gets you all of a team's games, or you could buy a league pass, which gets you the entire league's every game. So I don't know if that's close to being launched or if it's even still under consideration. I know before the commissioner change, it was something that they were looking at doing, and a lot of the athletic directors have wanted to do for a while. So if they can figure out how to launch a platform that looks, you know, similar to that. They had CBS All Access last year. That's the other thing. They had CBS All Access for Hockey East last year, where as long as you had a CBS All Access subscription, you could watch any game you wanted. It was like $6 a month. It was great.
Well, it's like Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's service is through NBC Sports Network. And so if you had cable and you
Yeah.
had NBC, you could watch all of their games every single weekend on NBC Sports Network's app because they had them all streamed there. And then
Yeah.
I don't know, I know back when I was covering UMass, Northeastern had one for free. I know there's some
I think they
schools
still
that
do.
did
Northeastern, I think,
free
still does it
ones.
through YouTube, I think.
Possibly, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, is it one of those things that maybe they'll have a featured game? Maybe it's like once every couple of weeks they have a featured game that's free, so they can get some fans to watch it or something along those
Yeah.
lines to see what the access is like, or like a free trial at the beginning, like the NBA or all these NBA All Access, all those different channels, and the
Yeah.
NHL, where they go like, oh, the first 2 weeks of the season are free, and people go, oh my God, this is awesome. Let me subscribe to this service. And so, like, not knowing, I'm the kind of guy who's like, I don't know if I want to pay for this. I don't know what the service is going to be like, and I had a subscription to Fast Hockey, so I know some really crappy broadcasts watching junior hockey players.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just hired someone at Orno Brewing Company. I just hired a former student athlete. He is at UMaine. He used to play junior hockey and all that stuff too. So it's fun shooting the shit with him about different junior hockeys and all that stuff. And he's like, he could have gone and played at Division III school, got a scholarship, like, you know, got that scholarship, but a opportunity to play on the team and do something. But none of the schools that he wanted to play at or willing to play at had the majors that he wanted. And so it's like he gave up hockey to come to UMaine to have the major he wanted, because he's like, if I go play a Division III school, I'm going to play a couple more years of hockey likely maybe get to go pro in some lower leagues, make a little bit of money, but then I don't have the career that I want.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
it's like he had to decide whether or not to actually, pursue playing more hockey and stick to that, or think about his future. And he decided to think about his future. But yeah, having some little conversations about junior hockey was pretty fun too. Because like I said, I've watched some really crappy junior hockey games on Fast Hockey with like they broadcast whatever they show on the jumbotron, so you see all the
You see the
ads for the
advertisements.
and you see all the advertisements and like, oh, pick the puck. Where'd the puck go? And it's like the kiss cams on there and all these different things. And I'm just like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah, those are my favorite. That and when this even happens with the college broadcast. Sometimes they'll go to break. The announcers will go to break on whatever radio station they're on, but the stream doesn't go to break. So they'll go to break, and then you'll just see crowd shots, and you'll just hear the guys talking to each other. Oh, we'll be right back, with Minnesota State hockey or whatever, and they go to break, and then just hear like, oh man, that was a terrible save, like terrible goal. Like, can't believe he didn't stop that. You just completely
That's all access right there. That is all access,
guys.
That's what I wanted with this NBA bubble because of how quiet the places have been. I've wanted them to just like have where you can spend premium dollars online to hear like absolutely everything that's said on the court,
Yes.
like them
Take the
jarring at
announcers
each other.
off. Don't even put the announcers on. Just hang mics from the ceiling and or have boom mics on a track following where the ball's going, and you can just listen to the guys talk. I think that'd be awesome.
Because they have TNT OT, which is really annoying to say, but if you have, I have NBA's because I'm a big NBA fan. I have an NBA's subscription service, and if you try to play a game that's on TNT, obviously they don't let you watch it, but they let you watch what's called TNT OT, which is basically like different camera angles they have above the backboard. They have like
ESPN does that too, yeah.
And they have one that showcases a specific player, and like say LeBron James is the player. They just follow that player the entire time he's on the court. That includes him sitting on a bench. He could be blowing his nose.
Change it?
And they don't change it. The thing that always bothered me is like, okay, that's kind of cool, but like I feel like it should be like a tier of players. So like if LeBron's on the court, follows him. If LeBron's on the court, not on the court, but AD is, then AD gets it. If AD is,
yeah. And then watch the guy sitting down.
But the other stupid part is the guy puts up a shot. They don't follow the ball. They literally, like, you don't know if he makes it. They're just on the guy. I'm like, who watches this? Who watches this? And TNT is paying someone to follow a specific player with a special camera, obviously, because it's not any of the broadcast cameras. For someone to watch this potentially, I'm like, a better thing would be $19.99 for the game, extra, all access, explicit, mature content. Yep. Hear them jarring back at each other and all that stuff. That is all. That would be something I'd pay for.
I would absolutely pay for that. The other one I saw it. ESPN has been using it like the front row cam. Have you seen
those?
That?
Those are awesome.
I love that angle.
The brewmaster at Owner Brewing Company and I have talked about that. I really hope they keep that when they go back out of the bubble next year.
Yeah,
that is a badass angle where it's just
one of the things too. Like if you watch it on the app, you can. If you go on like the Watch ESPN app, there's an option where you can stream the game and watch the whole thing from that angle.
It's like sitting in front row seats. It's like it's paying the $500-$600. Yeah,
like the thing just slides up and down, so it's unbelievable.
And watching like the replays of someone making a last second shot or a really like weird 3-pointer and seeing it from that angle, it's like you don't get that normally. So there's been some things about these bubbles that have been amazing, and that's one of them. We will tell you right now that the NHL and the NBA have done it right. It looks like they've done their whole like their bubble version of whatever version of bubble is better or whatever, but like no one's really caught COVID in those bubbles and things have gone well. And I feel like it's weird not saying home ice advantage and home basketball court advantage, but like it's still really pretty sweet to see, you turn on the game and it's like, I know this is what's going on right now. This is a bubble game. This is on a repeat because I can see the specific arena and there's nothing behind there and all that stuff. But it's been pretty cool to watch that. So if the NCAA could do that some sort of way with, like you said, the 2.5 months of nothing would be really, or no students on campus, and make it safe. I think I would be excited to watch hockey again, college hockey again for sure.
Yeah, me too. And I think ultimately too, the student athletes all seem to want to play. That's the most important thing. Like, at least I know from talking to the guys over at Merrimack, like their players just want to play. Like figure out a way that we can do it safely, but we want to play. Like that's why we're here. We don't want to have to lose years of eligibility. We don't want to have to go to. What if these guys want to retain? Okay, so they may get their eligibility back, but they're still going to school. So how many of them want to stay in school an extra year, just taking nothing classes to play an extra year of eligibility. I mean, it messes up a lot of career paths. Even you have guys that maybe, like you said, aren't necessarily going to even try to play pro hockey after this. This happens all the time. Guy graduates from a D1 school, he's got a really good job lined up, and he goes and takes that job. Well, you don't want him to lose a season, especially if he's a senior, lose your last season. And I think that happened with some of the spring athletes in the spring, even the ones that got extended the ability to have their eligibility brought back for another year. Not all of them took that opportunity
Mm.
for obvious reasons. So if there's and I think there is. I mean, I think, like you said, we've seen enough leagues go back and play and do it in a way that's safe, that I think you can figure out a way from uh, in a college hockey standpoint, probably league by league, to allow the student athletes the opportunity to still play. I'm also not naive. Hockey East has it pretty easy compared to some of the other ones where, I mean, with the exception of 2 opponents, you really don't need a hotel trip for any of your road games.
And also the benefit we get as Hockey East conference is the fact that we also don't have Notre Dame in there anymore either. So you're not traveling
Yeah.
states away. It's basically all Northeast New England area. So it's not you're not traveling into places that potentially could be way worse than it is in New England
Yeah.
to play hockey too. I mean, are they teams training together? Are they like together now, or are
Mhm.
each individual teams they're actually still like on campus together?
As far as I know, yeah, I know Merrimack actually skated last week. I think more than just once, but there a BC I know has already practiced. I'm sure other schools have as well. They're allowed, as the current rule, under a normal circumstance, they could start practice officially October 1st, but they've got, I think, 8 hours a week that they can be on the ice with the team in September. So that has begun for a lot of schools. I don't know that everybody's on the ice, because I don't think some have had approval to yet. But BU, I think I read, was going back on the 7th, so they're now in their second week. This week. Um, yeah, I think it's probably on a school by school basis, but I know a lot of the schools have their kids on the ice and they're at least doing something, preparation standpoint, and working on it. I saw pictures of Merrimack on the ice last week. They all had masks on during practice, but they were out there. So
Is there any big names like that didn't come back, or that are not coming back didn't go back to school because of COVID, or is it just basically status quo right now?
status quo, I think, for now. There was a couple of big names that aren't coming back. I think that that are probably pro signings more. They were probably going to go anyway. I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head that isn't coming back due to COVID. There's a couple of guys that I know were seniors last year who are now, playing in Europe instead of playing in the AHL because they can't get back into the country. Like, I think, I don't know. And you know what? That being said, there's got to be, and I haven't heard any stories of this yet, but college hockey is so broad now. There's players from Finland and Sweden, and there's got to be a player somewhere that went home for the summer and can't get back in, I would
Well, yeah,
imagine.
yeah, but also, would you think that those players that if schools got shut down in March, that I guess they could have left the country. Now that I'm thinking about it, but like because it was so early. Well, I mean, a lot of these students finished school, so I don't know. Maybe if
Maybe
some
they
of
were
them didn't
here
go
anyway in the
home, maybe
summer.
they
Yeah.
didn't go home because of the
Yeah.
fact that they got an apartment in the United States because by the time school ended in May and into June, maybe it was just like, well, maybe I'll just stay over here instead of going home. But I don't know.
Yeah. I don't
Because
know.
at that time, the United States wasn't as bad as like other places too. Like
True.
we were not. Right now, it's a shit show, but like back then, it wasn't as bad as it is now. But it's just interesting to see uh, that I'm just surprised because there are people who just don't come back to do things. I mean, there's people who didn't go to the NBA bubble or the NHL bubble
Yeah.
because they didn't want to play, and so it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, some of these top players, you could actually do that. Like a player that's like a top draft pick in the NHL who's playing college hockey knows that likely they're going to be able to play in the NHL at some point anyway. They could have just said, "Hey, for safety reasons, I'm not going to come play," and it might look bad on them, but it also I don't think a lot of people are going to judge that right now. I
Yeah.
mean, people gave some people shit, but other than that, I think some people just can't. Like, hey, can I come back whenever or whatever? I mean sometimes maybe they can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know how that works,
I
but
know a couple of recruits that opted to play elsewhere, like Canadian recruits. Merrimack had one that is going to play another year of juniors instead of coming to school right now. Um, and then there's a couple of others, I think, that were higher end recruits that are going to play major junior instead of playing college hockey for the year. And I think a lot of that had to do with, at the time, the major junior leagues were announcing that they were going to play, and we hadn't heard anything about college hockey yet. So guys that, especially the guys that were going into their draft year, not the guys that had already been drafted, but the guys that were going into their draft year that were like, well, I can't not play this year. I'm supposed to get picked next year. I think those guys, some of them opted. Those, I think one was a BC recruit and one was a Penn State recruit that they opted to go play major junior. I think to guarantee that they would play in their draft year.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if I say safety and some people not wanting to play because of COVID, but I'm wondering if some of these people decided to play 1 year more of your juniors because they don't know if the actual college hockey was going to happen. So like, if I know that potentially in junior hockey is going to happen, or even if it doesn't happen again, at least I don't have to go to school and just be in school and lose a year of eligibility, or lose a year and actually, have to go to school for a year. If I could just stay and play junior hockey for another year, why not do that? If I don't know that, if I don't know,
especially the freshmen, because they have the ability, if they're young enough, to still get that one more year without it really hurting them.
So that's pretty interesting. So did you start the Mack Report right after you got out of school, or did you?
Pretty much. Yeah. I graduated in May of trying to remember. May of 06.
You're getting old.
And I know. And then I didn't start with the Tribune until that September. The first thing I did was, the first day that I worked there was the Hockey's Media Day for 2006. That was my first day. So I think I started the Mack Report a few weeks after. It was a couple of weeks into that season, because I would go to the games, I'd write a game story, and then I'd be like, well, I've got 5 or 6 other things here. They just don't fit. And we only had 12 inches of space, so I had to cut out 400 words, but this is still stuff.
Yeah.
And the big inspiration for it at the time was Fudo Shinzawa was doing a Bruins blog for the Globe. It was Boston.com. And it was when it was still, that was basically the Globe's website. And I followed his stuff every single day. And that's where he would just throw up a lot of, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was just random blog posts with random stuff. Here are the line combinations of practice, and here's a couple of notes. It was basically just, little notes posts once a day, once every other day. So it kind of started out of that. And then it expanded and started to grow. 2012, I think, is when I started to cover all the other sports. But there was the first 6 years, it was just random posts about college hockey. And a lot of it was recruit and alumni updates, and then stuff that just didn't fit, in the newspaper. If there was a note about a guy potentially coming back from an injury or whatever, it kind of was used to just supplement the newspaper coverage. And then 2012 was when it really kind of evolved and just became something that was its own news source, as opposed to just supplementing what I was doing in the Tribune.
And then you started obviously at College Hockey News. Is that because of your work at the Mack Report that went to College Hockey News, or how did that relationship begin?
That started before anything, actually.
Oh, really?
So Mike Macknick, who does Merrimack Radio, he helped launch College Hockey News in 2006. The first time I ever covered anything was the 2006 Hockey East tournament. CHN had just started, and Mike was going to be going to the Garden for the hockey semifinals, and he said, I need someone to go with me. Adam Woden, who owns CHN, he's interested. Are you interested in just doing and helping out? Can you write for us? He knew I wanted to get involved in media and somehow, but I'd never written anything ever. So I actually went. I remember doing this. I sat in my apartment on a Saturday morning, probably in February, and wrote up a fake game story from the Merrimack UMass Lowell game from the night before. And not fake games, I used all the real details, but fake isn't I just made up quotes. And I sent it to them both, and I was like, let me know what you think. And they were both like, this is fantastic. Yeah, if you want to write, come on board and write. So I covered the Hockey East tournament the first weekend. BC beat BU, or BU beat BC in the
correct
final,
in the final
in overtime.
2-1 in overtime. Do you know who the MVP was?
Oh man, 2006. Oh, was it? What was his name?
His last name is weird. Not weird, but foreign.
Yeah. David something. David, he's a winger.
Vander Gulick.
David Vander Gulick.
That's just funny. I had the Hockey East championship history in front of me on my computer. Yeah, Boston University. That was the what 1, 2, 3, 4 like 6, 7 years that Boston University or Boston College all played in the championship game.
Yeah. So that was that first weekend, and then that went well. And then the next weekend, they needed someone to help cover the regionals in Worcester, and I was asked to do that, so I did that too. And then from there, I've been with CHN kind of ever since.
And it's funny because I like to talk to people about covering college hockey and so on. And you have your two big names, your College Hockey News and your USCHO, and but also one of the benefits we get for college hockey in being this hub, first of all, Hockey East on a selfish aspect of it is one of the greatest college hockey conferences in the country. But also, it's like it's up there. Like if anybody has to argue with that, there's just no arguing the fact that they're one of the top ones.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
and but also the part about it is because we were in the Northeast like this when I was living in Massachusetts is the luckiness that we every year we basically got a regional championship. Like every year there was some sort of regionals, and then multiple years I was able to drive to Providence for one night. The
Yeah.
next night drive to New Hampshire and
Some
go to
years you
New
get
Hampshire.
two.
And so sometimes we got two, and it was really kind of a cool experience. And then when I was covering UMass Lowell, was able to also. I mean, UMass Lowell wasn't in the Frozen Four, but I was also to be around and help write for Inside Hockey. For Kevin and do the Frozen Four at the Garden, which is really cool. Which one of the historically bad logos for a Frozen Four?
Yeah, that's right. It was
It
like
was
just like the
horrible.
statue of like Paul
Yeah.
Revere or something, right?
The colors were like the Celtics colors, but not
It's like
the Celtics
it
colors.
was
It
like
was just
green
like
and gold or something. It was really bad.
it wasn't even like a dark green and gold. It was like green and yellow. Even it wasn't
Yeah,
even. It was weird.
yeah,
I was like, oh god, are you serious right now? But yeah, it was like one of the benefits you get of covering college hockey in New England or in Massachusetts per se. Also, is you're in the center of everything. I mean,
yeah.
how many teams? I mean, you got Merrimack College, UMass Lowell, BU, BC, and Northeastern all within 40 minutes of each other. And then you have UNH, which is what from us, and you live in North Andover, right? So it's or you
Like
were in
about
North Andover.
40 minutes from there.
40 minutes there. And then if you wanted to take the trip a couple hours out to Western Massachusetts, you've got UMass. And then if you go to Connecticut, I mean, it was just
Yeah,
like so easy to get at Providence. It's so
you
easy
could
to
go
get
to every road
everywhere.
game,
Oh yeah,
with the exception of like if you're a
Vermont,
fan of
Maine.
if you're a fan of any of the teams that are south of UNH,
Yes.
you could go to any road
And
game you want and not have to stay in a hotel.
And that's what we used to ask each other after leaving Friday night. We'd be like, "Where are you tomorrow night? Where are you tomorrow night?"
Yeah,
It wasn't like, "Oh, like people up at UMaine are like, "Where are you tomorrow night?" Next to you in this press box,
yeah,
because I'm
the
like, I
same
can't go
spot.
anywhere else. And but down in Massachusetts, it was like you could just be like, "Where are you tomorrow night?" I think we go to Merrimack because like UMass Lowell would have a game off or whatever, and I'd be like, "I'll cover the Warriors. That'd be fun." So I go up there, and it was just, and I was living in Andover at the time, so it was really easy, obviously, to get to North Andover at
Yeah,
Merrimack College, and so, but yeah, UNH or sorry, UMaine and Vermont, and then when Notre Dame was in the conference, those are the ones that were just like impossible to really get to.
yeah,
You can, and I would always ask you like, "Are you going up?" Or when I moved back up here, I was like, the first couple of games that Merrimack played up here, I was like, "Are you coming up?" Or
yeah.
I'll talk to the guys from UMass Lowell and be like, "You guys making your way up here?" And so because it wasn't a guarantee. If
It's
UMass
not
Lowell
always. Yeah,
I mean, if UMass Lowell was playing Merrimack, you didn't have to ask me if I was going to be there. You knew I was going to be there. It
yeah,
was
exactly.
oh, instead of driving 15 minutes south of here, I'm going to drive 5 minutes north of here to get to the game. It was closer for me to get to Merrimack College than it was for me to get to UMass Lowell. But,
Yeah, no, and I'll still usually Maine and Vermont. I'll usually get to. I got to again kids. I got to see what their schedules look like. Uh, if they don't need to be in two places at the same time, so I'm not asking my wife to go to two places at the same time, then I usually will still make those weekends. Sometimes, not gonna lie, UMass and UConn get a little tough. UConn especially because UConn you'll get weird ones where they share the building with the AHL team. You get like a 3 p.m. game on a Saturday, and it's like, well, that's just not gonna work.
or even a Sunday or like a 6 p.m. game on a Thursday. It was the
Yeah,
weirdest
yeah.
things. Yeah, but it was always nice for me because my parents live in Connecticut, so it was like
Oh,
I didn't have to pay for a hotel or like just go down, be an excuse to visit my parents. Hey, I'm coming to visit you. Oh, by the way, I have a hockey game tonight,
yeah.
but then I'll come visit you.
The XL Center's not bad. They got a hotel that connects to the building. The problem is every single time I've been down there for anything, and I've looked at how much a room is at that hotel, it's like $300 a night. Like this isn't Manhattan. Like, no offense to Hartford, but
No,
I'm not spending $380 to stay at the Hartford Hilton.
but I mean, it was. I would say that the years I covered UConn at that arena, they had some like they have some fun games there because it's not. I don't know. It's a different environment because the XL Center is not brand new, but it had this like, I don't know. It's cool. Like UMass Lowell, we had that the lucky part of having a AHL arena that was retrofitted into a college hockey arena.
Yeah.
I mean, that was cool, but it was like a much bigger arena. I mean, the arena itself must be, is it? It's because it's just longer upper tiers, right? That's what it is.
Oh yeah. It's
Like,
probably, I bet it's capacity wise, it might be twice the size of
yeah.
Saugus.
Well, it's because that's where the Hartford Whalers played, right?
Yeah.
In that area.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like it's a professional hockey arena. Like
Yeah. I mean, it was small for NHL, but like I bet there's 14,000 seats in there. Were you ever up on where their radio guys had to be?
Oh, I know where they are though, because I used to look for Bob up there and Jimmy up there. I mean, that seems scary.
I don't like it. I yell at every time we're there because it's UConn. They don't have any other guests usually. So Mike will be like, "Hey, do you want to do the second intermission?" I'm like, "Okay." I got to go all the way up there. Okay, it's a catwalk. I mean, for people that don't know, you literally have to walk across the catwalk at the top.
Can you drop a microphone down with a cord and I'll stand down here?
The thing is, too, there's one spot where like the floor buckles a little bit because it's sheets of plywood with carpet on the catwalk. And I don't think it's not going to break, but it's like it's just the plywood's bowed a little bit. So when you step on it, like it just drops like a quarter of an inch. The first time I froze. Like I stood there with my hands on the railing on each side being like, I can't go anymore. Because I'm just looking out, you're at the roof of the building, you're looking down at the scoreboard and everybody below you. And I'm like, that's it. This is how it's going to end. I'm going to die at the XL Center.
Michael, how'd you get paralyzed? Well, I was doing a radio interview in the second intermission at a hockey arena. What?
And everything is still like, there's a bunch of stuff up there that you can tell they left there when the Whalers left. There's like old fax machines, old copy machines that look like they're out of 1995.
Old fax machines. Maybe someone's contract was faxed on that thing. You should pick one up and try to sell them.
There's like file cabinets. You open it up and it's got like stickers and stuff and old pieces of paper with like Whalers and Hartford Wolfpack logos on them. And it's like, you can tell this stuff is like a time capsule. It's just, it's stood because I bet no one's wanted to climb across a catwalk to bring all that equipment down. So it all stayed up there.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you just have a fun time throwing them down if they ever do renovations. So you just throw all the shit down and worry about it hitting anything.
Let it break. Let it break.
Back, I don't know how long ago, thinking about the Hartford Whalers, I started a Facebook page years ago. Like I'm talking probably 2006. Bring back the Hartford Whalers, and at Bring Back Whalers is the Facebook thing. I get likes every single week on this page. It has 1,580 likes on the page. I have done. Last time I posted anything was 2015. And that was self-promotion of Mill City Sports. I was trying to get my people to like my page, right? And then before that, I uploaded a new Facebook header photo in 2013. But yeah, it was just kind of funny how like every once in a while, like I don't want to delete it, but I get these notifications like, oh, page notification. I'm like, what's that? Oh, someone just liked the Bring Back the Hartford Whalers page I created when I was like, 20 years old.
That stuff stays around.
But yeah, so we covered hockey together. We covered what I want to chat a little bit about now that we know that. So let's wrap up a little bit of hockey talk. So looks like November, hopefully, is college hockey, likely conference only, right? That's what you were saying. It's like,
so, yeah.
Likelihood. There's going to be no Canadian exhibition games like we normally get in hockey.
Nope.
Guessing no U18 USA games that are going to happen this year against us, against the college hockey teams.
I think, they play in the USHL too, so I think they'll probably just stick to that schedule would be my guess.
And then we have hopefully trying to get it within a couple of months to try to like get it so there's their own little bubble, we want to call it, which will be pretty cool because I'm excited. So like for a couple of years, it was just me moving up here and trying to get my life situated in this area that I lost track. Like I didn't even like, luckily it was a couple of years that UMass had a little bit of a slump. And I was like, oh, this is pretty, like, I'm going to check it on them. And then I would only cheer or go to games when they played UMaine and so on. And now I work for the Orono Brewing Company, which is it's 6 minutes to the University of Maine.
I was going to say, it's got to be right down the street.
So like we host things all the time. I've had bananas at our Brewery. We're a sponsor of the team, so like we have different events that we do. We've had the football coach over, so it's really, I don't walk in with a sweatshirt on. I'll tell you that much. I
would.
have
It's
done
probably
it.
smart.
I have done it as a sarcastic thing, but then I didn't get the guts to actually like keep it on, so I just put it away. But I mean, I just went to the basement to get this. This was in my clothes. I didn't even take it out for a couple of years now. But I was like, oh, the winter clothes. I brought the winter clothes up. I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Mike. I'll put my
There you
sweatshirt
go.
2013. But we also used to cover mixed martial arts, and we were lucky enough to do Combat Zone in New Hampshire, which is now in a different spot, right? Because they're not even because the racetrack doesn't exist anymore.
They knocked
tore
it
that
down. They tore it down. They're in the middle of building like a giant development there right now. I think it's gonna be apartments and like a bunch of outdoor shopping.
And then, but now they moved to the Radisson, I think it is, in is it Manchester? Not Manchester.
Yes.
Is it Manchester?
I think it is Manchester.
And the
I
Radisson
haven't been
there.
to any. Yeah, I haven't been to any of the new shows or the shows since they moved. But there's a giant Radisson with like ballrooms and conference room space almost right across the street from the. Well, now it's the SNHU arena, the old Verizon arena. So it's not far from there.
But that was I think I went to a wedding at that place. Honestly, is that the one that looks like a castle?
Yeah. It's like if you go past the arena and then it gets down on the left-hand side, I think.
And so our buddy Calvin, does he still run it, or is he like someone else running it for him? Do you know what's up with that?
So I don't know. I get the impression that his brother is doing more of the like day-to-day operations of the promotion. I'll get emails and stuff from them every once in a while, and the contact info is always his older brother, not him, which makes sense. I mean, he's a top 10 ranked.
I was going to say, so Calvin Cater is the guy we're talking about, who is a UFC fighter now, which we did back, I don't know, it was a long time ago. We did a talk. I talked to you about when's his next break. I can't find the article. I feel like it's still on Mill City Sports probably somewhere. But talking about Calvin, and do you think the UFC is next? And it was a little while later. It was like a year or two later, but he ended up getting a shot in the UFC, and he's done respectably well to the point where he's a top 10. Is he featherweight?
He's a featherweight, yeah,
top 10 featherweight in the UFC right now, and had some losses so far, but he's been able to keep himself at least growing and beating some big, tough competition. And I love following him. I'm so excited to see when he wins, and I love watching him fight because he's such a good fighter. But so we used to cover the time where like someone would fall onto the mat in the ring, and they'd have to stop the fight because it was like the plywood broke and all that, like this other like rinky-dink places and stuff like that. In the I remember, like I said, I only covered them when they were at the racetrack in Nashua. But it was seeing Calvin just walk around and running this little tiny promotion in New Hampshire, and then now seeing him fight in front of thousands and thousands of people with millions of people watching online, traveling all over the world, is really cool to see. I mean, I just love seeing it.
Yeah, and he's headlined. I mean, they obviously hasn't headlined a pay-per-view yet, but there's been a couple of like cards on ESPN, like Fight Night cards, where he's been the headline. Like it's been UFC Fight Night, whatever, UFC on ESPN, Cater versus whoever, I forget who was facing, but I think there's been 2 of those now where he's been the main event. So that tells you something. I mean, he goes, well, Boston finisher, right? That's the nickname. Yeah. I mean, his fights tend to usually be pretty exciting, and they tend to usually not go the distance. So
now he's what, 2-4? He's 6-2 in the UFC. He made his UFC debut in 2017 against Andre Fili, Touchy Fili.
He had a couple years off tw, didn't he? Before that,
he had some time off a little bit. He didn't do like a whole year's, but I think like he didn't fight for, I don't know. I mean, I guess not really. He fought 2017 July, and then January of 2018, and April of 18, and October of 18. But he took time off between. Yeah, he took 2013 to 2016 off. When he was fighting at Combat Zone. He came back at Combat Zone, did a CES fight, and then Combat Zone, a couple of CES fights, and that's when he got his break. But yeah, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 TKOs or KOs, a couple decisions. Any of his losses have always been decisions. That's the big thing with him. It's like he either wins by knockout or finish, or he loses by decision. It's like he's gonna stay in the battle. He's not gonna duck out early.
Yep. Yeah, I covered one of those CES fights too. There was one in Providence, I think, at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. I forget.
Yes.
It's
CES 13, Real Pain. Yeah, Saul
Was it
Almeida. Yep.
Saul Almeida? Yeah, he was a pretty good fighter too.
He was.
Both
I
those
honestly
guys.
thought he was gonna make it to the make it big
Yeah,
too, and it's just like it
both
just
of
seems
those
like,
guys were supposed to, because that was a
and
big fight.
and he
That
won.
and it wasn't the main event. That was the one. That was the show that Dave Batista fought in the main event. His one and only MMA fight before he went on to become Drax.
That's unbelievable. uh, but yeah, so he fought. Yeah, he's fought 8 times in the UFC. He's got 2 fight of the night bonuses. One of them was in Boston, UFC 220 in 2018. He got a TKO over against Shane Burgos. What do you mean he's beat Ricardo Lamas? And he's beat Jeremy Stevens.
Yeah, he's beat good
Those
fighters.
are some big names.
Yeah.
I mean, like big names. So it's really cool to see that. And I don't know, it doesn't have on here what his next fight is, because he just fought in July. He won by unanimous decision. But he's also got one of the fight of the nights though was a loss. The loss to the Russian dude, guy with a Zabit with a wicked long last name, which starts with an M.
Oh,
Moscow.
yeah,
That was the his first main event, UFC Fight Night. That guy's last name and versus Cater, and then he did Dan IGE.
Yeah.
On UFC on ESPN. That was his last fight in July. Unanimous decision win. He was the headliner of that one too.
Yeah, the Magna, was it Magna Masharapov or something like that? I don't even know how to say it.
I was trying to find a way that Wikipedia doesn't have like a pronunciation on it, but it's a long last name.
But yeah, but he's fought good fighters. I mean, I think that's why he's in a pretty safe spot right now. He's not really going to go anywhere. I mean, even if he loses his next fight, whenever that's going to be, it's not like he's going to be in trouble of getting cut. He's on pretty solid ground for the time being.
I mean, he has a 6-fight or now it's 5 fights left in that contract because the fight in July was his first fight on the 6-fight contract, which means nothing in the UFC. Yeah. So it means that they're going to continue to give you fights if you continue to win, but if you lose, they can just delete that contract.
They just cut you whenever they want.
It's nice to see that he actually is like he's 22-4 professionally out of 26 matches now. He's 32, so it is that point where he did start his career late. So it's not like he's going to have 40 fights under him. Likely before he retires from the NHL, but retires from the UFC.
He just has to be smart.
Yes.
Like, be smart who you fight. If he can keep moving up the rankings, he needs to win probably 2 or 3 more. But if he beats 2 or 3 of those top 7 contenders, he's probably going to get a title fight.
I mean, one of his only losses, so they said he went 6-2. Zabit, that guy I was talking about, is number 3 in the featherweights. Yeah. He's number 6. So like one of his only 2 losses in the UFC has been against someone who's ranked 3rd in his division. Yeah. So it's not like he's losing against crappy people. He's losing against people that should be up there. The guy who's 18-1 in the UFC or in professional MMA.
Yeah, so if he can keep performing well against, obviously if he ends up fighting a guy below him, like you said, at 32 years old, he's probably at a spot now where he's got to go for it. Like, I would imagine if he's number 6, he wants to fight number 3 again or number 4. This is the time where he's got to kind of have to go for it and see if you can get to the top ranked guy in the division. Because if you're just fighting guys below you, yeah, I mean, what's the benefit if you beat the guy? Yeah, you're supposed to beat him. And if they beat you, it's like, well, holy hell, maybe you're not as good as we thought you were. And now you drop from 6 to 10 or from 6 to out of the top 10 altogether. So I would imagine he's at the point now where he's going to be picking his spots and wants to face someone that can get him to climb the ladder,
Because he's fought, the top 15 fighters, he's fought, let's see, Shane Burgos, he's fought Dan Ige or whatever, I don't know how to say his last name, Jeremy Stevens, he's beat them all. He fought Zabit, also top fighter. You have Yair Rodriguez, who's 5th, right above him. Chan Sung Jung, who's number 4. Zabit, number 3. Brian Ortega and Max Holloway. So I could see him, fighting a 4th, Chan, or even number 2, Brian Ortega. But like, I don't know who they are lined up against and stuff like that. So it would be nice to see him revenge Zabit and get that fight again, so that he can move up in the rankings, but also get a win over someone who's beat him before, which would be pretty cool. But every time he's on, I'm always just like, okay, I don't care what I'm doing. I'll do it. I'll watch it. I mean, because also where benefit is 90% of the time he's on those fight nights that I get to see on cable television anyway. So you have to buy the pay-per-view.
Exactly. And hopefully if he gets a rematch there, he's not having to take the fight in Moscow. It doesn't have to be in Boston, but maybe somewhere that is a little closer than. I can't imagine the travel. Who knows when he went out there? But the travel of, okay, I'm going to not only go to a different country, but I'm going to go halfway across the world to fight a guy. I mean, even if you went out there with a week in advance, is your body fully adjusted? I mean, like that's a lot.
And he fought a guy who's from Russia at a main
Yeah.
event in Russia who was 18 or 17-1 or whatever he was, 16-1.
And who didn't have to travel at all. So it's like you're doing all this travel. The guy you're fighting doesn't have to travel at all. So that day you spent in the air on a plane, he spent, in his gym or whatever, didn't have to go through a time change, didn't have jet lag. Like, who knows how much that affects a guy.
Correct. I mean, and then he's fought in Boston a couple of times now. But Boston hasn't had a card since what? 2018.
I think so. I think that was the last one, yeah.
So I think let's go Boston. But they won't have it anytime soon because they're fighting in Vegas and Florida and things like that now anyway. So.
I wouldn't mind if they did a Bangor one again. That was fun. I went up to that show too.
That was unbelievable. That was one of those weird nights though. I didn't book a hotel because I thought I was going to do this. I thought I was going to do that. And I was living in Massachusetts. So I was like, I won't get one. I went to contact a hotel place because the UFC was in town. There was no hotels available on the night. So then I was like, I'll just sleep in my car in the Walmart parking lot. Then I'll get up early in the morning. I couldn't fall asleep in the car. Because, that's the difference between hockey and covering MMA. If you go to an MMA fight and actually do all the fights, you're there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to do like set up and all that stuff. And maybe 3 o'clock. You get the first fights at 4 usually, or 6, depending on when it is. And then your main event doesn't go on until 11:30. And then you've got post-fight press conferences.
Which don't end until like 2 a.m.
And then you're like, okay, now it's 2:30 in the morning, and now what do I do? So I slept in my car for a little bit, and then I said, screw it. And I just got in my car and drove back to Massachusetts, got back at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and went to bed. And then luckily it was a Saturday into a Sunday, so I had the day off. But it was a rough time.
It's a rough day.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason why I can't imagine some of these people who are UFC commentators or UFC people who fight, especially the commentators who literally have to be there from beginning to end and every weekend sometimes now with the UFC. It's just
and that's why they got so many teams now too. Like they got like 2 or 3 different announced teams at least.
But being a full-time MMA journalist would be I can't imagine now because it used to be once a month.
You used to be able to do it no problem. Like you said, you go to one event a month. That was fine. Now UFC is the point where they're literally on television at least once a week.
At least sometimes it's Friday night and Saturday night, depending on what it is. It's pretty. I like it as an MMA fighter. I'm like pumped about it because it's turning into a college hockey where it could be Friday, Saturday night, it'd be kind of cool. And a lot of it's on ESPN or whatever, and so you can just turn it on and watch it and see what's going on. But I know. And then you have some of these pay-per-views now where they're charging $100 and all that stuff. So it's like, okay, but it's cool to see that, UFC is back as well. And they've been able to do it most of the way. I mean, they haven't had really any serious issues. They've had some people get COVID, but not give it to anybody else.
Yeah.
And then to see that, Calvin actually has made it now and become the fighter that he is, because I love Calvin. He's a super nice dude. Like genuine, down to earth kind of guy, and he fights well. He backs his words up, but he also it was cool to see him fight in Combat Zone, knowing that one day this guy's gonna be something, and to see him walking around running Combat Zone, and then eventually getting back into the ring and fighting before he ended up going to a different. I'm wondering though, the fight he did in 2013 was his last Combat Zone fight. That was before he bought Combat Zone, right? Is my guess. No, because he bought it back in. Because he fought in CES, then he went back to Combat Zone for one fight, and then he waited 3 years. So honestly, it probably was 13-ish that he bought it.
It sounds that So it looks like I just Googled it here. I did a story about him buying it in September of 2013 in the Eagle Tribune.
He fought June of 13, so he fought just prior to it.
So I wonder, but I don't know when he bought it.
And then he bought it, and then didn't fight for 3 more years, and went to his first fight back was at CES. So he never did fight under his own promotion, which is good because that could get sketchy.
Yeah, I would imagine he wouldn't have, because I bet this show in June, and I'd have to read the story. Of course, now it's behind the Eagle Tribune's paywall, so I'd have to. If I remember correctly, the old owner, which I think his name was Dan George or Dave George. I think he owned it when he fought. I think in the story I wrote, I remember him talking about this. I think he bought it after that fight. I think that fight, that June show, was the last one under the old owner, and then Calvin bought it, I think.
Which would make sense because he took 3 years off after that from fighting.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
fought
And I
in
think
June
he
of
was
13, didn't fight again until April of 16.
and he was kind of focused at that point on being a promoter. And then I don't know, but he was training. Like, he didn't stop training. That was the thing. He didn't stop training the entire time.
I'm glad he didn't because, I mean, now, like I said, we got 8 UFC fights so far under his belt. To think back on it, when we talked about Calvin, we used to talk about him and talk about going to Combat Zone, all that stuff back in 2012, 13, 14 area, right around there. And, well, yeah, when's his break? And now he's had 8 fights in the UFC since then, which is just time flies in that aspect of it because, like, it's fascinating to have. I mean, there's not very many people in the UFC who sign on at that age and get 8 fights, period. Like, let alone continuing to fight in the UFC and having a 6-fight contract coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, usually you get guys that go in and, I mean, if you don't win your first couple of fights, you're done. Like, even when you don't win your first fight, in a lot of cases, you're done. So,
I mean, there's people who have won people who have won the fight, Ultimate Fighter, who have had a couple of fights in the UFC and then not actually ever done it again.
Yep. Yeah. I'm trying to see. I just looked this up now. So the first fight of his I covered was his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That was his 9th fight. Andrew Montanez. This is the first MMA event I covered, was him in the main event against Andrew Montanez for American Steel Cage Fighting, September.
I love these names of these these different fighting things. American. And he fought in the Elite XC too.
He did right before that.
Jersey?
He lost. Yeah. So he fought Andrew. It was American Steel Cage Fighting. It was at the Ice Center in Salem. He was the main event, and it was a big deal because the guy who was trying to get that promotion off the ground was the guy who was Mickey Ward's manager.
And I'd never heard of it, so it didn't get off the ground, I'm guessing.
It didn't get off the ground. But the guy, I forget his name, Sal something, in the movie The Fighter.
Yes.
The guy, the guy was a character in the movie. He was the guy that was trying to get this MMA promotion off the ground. And Cater was in the main event.
That's pretty funny.
I want to say Sal Lapoli, but that's the guy who owns the pizza place.
But Sal does sound right anyway, because it sounds like such a Boston name. So it's like, but I love how the names like Extreme Elite XZ and the Extreme Championship Fight League, and
that's
I'm just like, the UFC got it right with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Like literally, that is one of the best names that's out there. So, but it's pretty cool to see him doing that, and he's from Massachusetts too, which is cool because it's not just, he didn't just have a MMA thing and move here later on in his life. He was born in Methuen. So he's a North Shore born and raised kind of guy, which is pretty cool to see him fight in the UFC.
Sal Lanano, that was his name.
Sal
Lanano.
He's not the guy that owns Sal's Pizza, though, right?
No, that's the other Sal that I was thinking. Yeah, I think
miss Sal's Pizza.
Yeah, I haven't had Sal's Pizza in a while. I haven't had
any pizza. Who's eating out in a while?
Yeah. Really had anything.
You get delivery or pickup, but
yeah, even then.
But so everything else good in your life? Kids are doing well. Wife's doing well.
Everything else is doing pretty well. How about you? I know. Congratulations. I know you recently got married.
I got married.
Should have said that at the beginning of the show.
See, we got married and we didn't give anybody COVID. There's another wedding that we weren't the wedding in Maine that gave everybody COVID. I'll tell you right now. People do that all the time. They're just like, "Oh, you got married," and I'm like, "Yeah." And I have to say something. I'm like, after 2 or 3 weeks, you're like, "Whew." Because they got married.
Yeah.
The Millinocket wedding was August 7th. I got married August 8th. So like we talked about it. My wife and I talked about it afterwards when we were on our honeymoon. I was like, because we did the wedding on the 8th. We didn't go on our honeymoon until the 15th. So we went back to work for a little bit, and then my boss owns a condo at Sugarloaf. And so we just went out to Sugarloaf Mountain and like did some waterfalls and hiking and stuff like that, just to stay in the state. We were supposed to go to Arizona, but obviously I'm not going to Arizona right now. And I said if it was 10 days earlier, if that person was trying to get married July 31st or whatnot, we wouldn't have had our wedding. There's no way we would have gone forward. I mean, I've had other friends who've gone to weddings or have had weddings since we got married, but it's like that immediate reaction, like 6-7 days later is when we found out what happened at this wedding. Like, there's no way.
Especially in the same state, like in the state.
We're only at Millinocket, it's like 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes from here. It's not that far. So it's like, it's it was crazy to hear, but we were on our honeymoon being like, oh God. And then when we got about the 3 week mark after our wedding, we were like, thank God no one got it. Because like
Yeah.
we had 48 guests. We were supposed to have 80, but we ended up moving it down to 48. My parents and my older brother, and then my aunt and uncle and grandmother were the only ones that weren't from Maine. So out of the 48, there were 6 out-of-staters. They were from Connecticut and New Hampshire, which both were doing okay at the time in August for this. So we felt pretty comfortable. We asked people to wear masks when they were at the buffet because we did have a buffet, a taco bar. The caterer had special utensils for every individual person to use, so it was very well done.
Yeah.
And we were happy and proud of what we were able to do. But it was relieving after 3 weeks of the wedding, being like, oh, okay, no one had said they had COVID, no one got COVID, so it worked out perfectly.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I had a positive antibody test. I was sick in February, really, really bad. Like I've never been this sick in my entire life. I was in bed for 11 straight days, with the exception of going to the doctor 3 times. And then finally, I had a physical a couple of weeks ago, and my doctor was like, because I had said I wanted to take one, and he goes like, well, don't pay for one. He's like, you can get a private one, but they're expensive. He goes, I'll just give you one when you have your physical. Okay, great. And I went in and he did one, and it came back by. He's like, yeah. He goes like, there's no telling when I had it. Like when
it could
I
have
was
not been that time. It could
exactly.
have been. Yeah.
Yep, that's what he said. Like when I was sick in February, I may have just have had the flu, but I had never been that sick. They diagnosed me with the flu and, oddly enough, pneumonia, and this was in the middle of February before and it was 11 days after we got back from Disney World, which is like a petri dish of like you're touching railings and everything else all day long. And I couldn't sit up. Like I'd be laying down in bed and I couldn't sit up to take medicine without being like, I can't, like I'm out of breath. Like I felt like I just ran for like an hour and a half. And they had me on everything. They thought it was the flu. So like they had me on Tamiflu, but that never made it better. Then I was on an inhaler because I had pneumonia. Like I was on everything at once. My wife still had to go to work, so she would set alarms on my phone because I'd be sleeping most of the day, and then an alarm would go off and be like, okay, what time is it? It's 11 o'clock. Okay, let's see. All right, I got to take these 2, and I would take whatever I needed to take, and I go back to sleep again. It was from a Saturday. I brought my son to a hockey game a Saturday morning, and I was like, I don't really feel that great. And I had covered a game at BU the night before, and I started to not feel that great the night at BU. Saturday morning, I still didn't feel great, but I'm like, oh, he's got a hockey game. I got to take him. So we went, and we got home at like 1 o'clock, and I said, I'm just going to go lay down. And from that Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock until the following Tuesday, so like 2 Tuesdays later, I pretty much didn't get out of bed except for 3 times when I went to the doctor. It was nuts.
That's crazy. I mean, Taylor, my wife, had a negative COVID test the Wednesday, or she took the test on Tuesday, got the results on Wednesday, 3 days before our wedding, because she had a sore throat and she's like, oh, she thought she had strep. So she's like, okay, I still got to go to that. So she called her doctor, and in our area, the Cross Insurance Arena, which is where the UFC event was, that Cross Insurance Center, I should say. Arena is one in Portland. That parking lot is where the COVID testing is right now. So you have an appointment, you drive in your car, they swab your nose without even getting out of the car. They put it in there, so they're like, hey, they were doing the strep test over there too. So you can go do that as well. So she went over there on Tuesday and got the test. When she got there, they're like, oh, no, we're giving you the COVID test too. So they gave her the COVID test. And then I'm freaking out because I'm like, so I couldn't go to work because if at the time she got tested, she could be positive. So in our minds, we're like, she doesn't have it. Let's get past this. Like, I know she doesn't have it, but it was like freaking out. And I eventually called my work on Wednesday being like, I can't come into work today. And then I got a phone call. We got a phone call from the doctor being like, oh, no, it's negative. That was one of the, it was a euphoric feeling. It was like highs. And it was
I'm sure
to know that you didn't have it and so on. Cause just getting sick during a pandemic period. Like if you get a small cold, because that's the other thing that people don't understand is you can get a cold.
Yeah.
You can get the flu. You can get anything right now. Just because you get sick does not mean you have COVID.
Exactly.
That's the stupid part. Just because COVID is there, it doesn't take the place of all other illnesses.
Of everything else.
Oh, you won't get cancer now because of COVID.
Yeah.
Like it's possible to get these illnesses. And so I had a stomach bug at the end of July, and my anxiety made me feel worse because I was anxious.
Yeah.
And
it's the first thing that goes in your head, I'm sure.
even if I call the doctor's going to be like, you don't have any of the symptoms, so you're not going to get a test. So it's like, it's weird. It's not as simple as like, oh, you have a fever, you have whatever, or something along those lines. Yeah. So it's definitely a weird time because, if I get a stuffy nose, I'm like, oh shit, here we go.
I'm the same
And
way.
it's like, oh yeah, the weather's
Yeah.
different, and then we're entering the flu season, so people are going to get the flu,
Yeah.
and not get COVID, and so people are going to get sick and not have the pandemic virus. Like,
Exactly.
going to be,
Yeah.
But yeah, so things have been well. We've been just figuring things out and working a lot and so on. So it's nice to be married and get it over with because, that's a lot of planning and money that's now gone. But I said after the wedding, the day after the wedding, I'm like, now what? Now what do we plan for? Like, we did for over a year now. We're like planned a wedding, and we're like, so this is what we're gonna do, and when we're gonna do it, and And I said, what are we gonna do now? Like, this is over. And then we thought, well, maybe we'll be able to take our honeymoon this fall instead of this summer, like our actual one. And then we're like, that's not going to happen. So we're like, well, we will do it in January, and that's probably not going to happen. So like, we're now thinking that I have until 2021 December to use my flights. So I think we'll figure something out to do between now and then. But
because I had the same thing with my Frozen 4 flights from last year.
Yeah.
My flights to Detroit, I have time to rebook them or use them as a credit or something.
And of course this didn't happen when the Frozen 4 was in Boston.
Yeah.
Like you had to flights, hotels, all that stuff. We lost the hotel because that was a non-refundable thing. It was like one night we had in a hotel because we had booked all the stuff ahead of time, and we lost 15% of our rental because we had a rental of a van, like a camper van.
Oh, okay, nice.
So we lost some money, but we were able to get, like, as long as we use these flights. And I told Taylor, I was like, even if it's not for our honeymoon, sometime next fall, hopefully we'll just go even if for a weekend, let's use the flights because we've already paid for them. Let's just go somewhere. Even if we have to just do something. Like, I don't care if it's visiting my grandparents in Florida. We'll just go somewhere. So we'll figure that out. But maybe it's I'll use them to fly to the Frozen 4.
If we figure out, I think they said it's going to be in Pittsburgh. It's supposed to be in Pittsburgh.
Are they just going to move the Detroit one? Is that what the theory is? I mean, that would make sense just to put them at the end. Like,
do it at the end of the cycle.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes sense. Yeah, that's my guess. But
why screw everybody else's scheduling up and things like that for something as trivial as where the Frozen 4 is going to be?
So in which case it would go Pittsburgh, Boston, and then tack Detroit on the other side of Boston. Boston's supposed to be the last one of the cycle, but you could just go Pittsburgh, Boston, Detroit.
And then whoever gets the next one will be after Detroit, which would make sense to me, but we're not in charge of that. So
nope.
No, they haven't asked you yet. They don't want your opinion?
No, not yet, unfortunately. We'll get there someday.
Well, so the MackReport.com is where you can find most of the stuff for Michael. Michael, I call you Michael. I don't know. My best friend's name is Michael. So I've known you as Mike forever, but I call him Michael. So your name is Michael, right? I mean, it's not like it is Mike. But,
no.
And so, quick question for you though: the VIP, is that specifically for Merrimack Sports? Like, your website's basically Merrimack Sports, but do you do? Yeah. I saw maybe a thing on there that, like, you did a breakdown of more of the delay in the hockey season. But is it the VIP for all sports, or is it mainly hockey in there?
It's mainly college hockey. It'll be a little bit of everything. It's mainly college hockey. So it's stuff that maybe isn't ready to get put on CHN yet, but like I've got a pretty good idea of something. So it's not even just Merrimack. It's kind of just college hockey in general.
What do you? This is a thing that no one else is going to give a shit about. But what are you using for a paywall service now? Because I remember we used a different service. What?
Yeah, it's called Paid Memberships Pro.
Okay. I know we used, what was the first one? Because when you first went to a premium service, there was a company that was awesome, and then they went out of business.
Oh yeah, CoinTent. That's who it was, and then they went out of business. Yeah. And we got an email with like a week's heads up, but hey, FYI, we're going out of business.
Yeah. I was like, oh no.
Like, what about all these people? Like, I have people that paid for like yearly subscriptions and everything. Like, what do we do? What do I do?
It's all on us now at that point too. But
basically, that's what they said. They were like, "Yep, figure it out. Sorry, bye." So I had I set it up through Paid Memberships Pro, which is like I found it through a plugin through WordPress, and then I had to go in and find the people who had paid for yearlies, and I had to set them up with a separate account in the news. Like, it was a disaster.
I can imagine. Your site looks amazing. I'll tell you that much. I'm really happy the way it looks because I'm a designer, so I just like the way it looks. The colors all work. The logo looks great. Everything looks great. I'm on it right now. It looks beautiful. And then college hockey news, but hopefully you'll have some most of this content you've had to put out recently has been like, when is things gonna start? Not actually things that are happening yet, because we're not even in the college hockey season technically yet anyway, because it wouldn't have started until the beginning of October anyway. But
yeah, we'd have a couple more weeks technically.
Yes, but hopefully in November we'll do this, and maybe we'll get you back on to talk playoffs or how things went or how things are going later on, because I always loved it. I was saying is we're doing these cool things now where I'm doing these regular segments. We're doing ones on movies and comics and all these different things, and having specific guests on back to do these things. And so I won't do as many college hockey ones, but it'd be kind of cool to get you back in towards the end of the season to see how things went this season, how the playoffs are going, and all those things, so updates. But you also have a podcast, right, on the Mack Report?
Yeah, I don't have a funny, interesting name. It's just right now called the Mack Report podcast. Yeah.
You've had 60-something episodes, so that's impressive right there.
Yeah, that's going well. It's taken like 5 years to get there, but I'm usually good about every couple of weeks.
Okay, so do you have a schedule for that, or is it just like whenever you feel like
it's whenever I get one? It's mostly coaches, so like I'll do a lot with men's hockey, obviously, because I see those guys regularly, but we'll sprinkle in other coaches as well. It'll be topical stuff, like if there's something like the latest one was from the end of July. It's been a while, but when they Merrimack hired a new women's basketball coach, so we got her on. But it's more of, there's no set schedule. It's just a random podcast that'll pop in anytime something comes up.
You want to add stress to your life is add a thing on your website that says you have a weekly podcast. Just let you know. Because it's been like, oh shit.
For a while, that's what it said, and then I just took out weekly.
Well, it's funny because I like the idea of doing it weekly, and I was like, oh, I'll do it on Wednesday. I have Mondays off. I can figure this out, and then I didn't do the work I needed to, because I always felt like it was too far in advance to try to schedule people, and I was like, well, I guess if I can just get yes, you'd want to do it kind of thing, then I can get closer. And so now I have it, basically, I was working on it this morning. I have it scheduled out till December, hopefully.
Perfect.
Everybody can do it. Maybe I'll swap some. There's a couple of people who are super fluid, so it's like, hey, man, I'll fill in whenever you need to fill in. So I can move some. But I've got some people that are filling. So I have that aspect of it, which is nice. And then going into the next year when I started, because I'm taking a break in December, in January, it will be like there'll be 2 guests, then a regular guest that we have on back to back, and then 2 guests. So there'll be some more spread outness of it. So it'll make it easier for that aspect of it too. But cool. That was like, oh shit, now I have to put a podcast out every week. This is fun. and I don't want I wouldn't want to record this and release it in 3 weeks, because what if yesterday, last night, something crazy happened, or 2 weeks from now, something crazy happened. It happened. I did a podcast with a comic book shop in Bangor, and 2 days after we recorded, Chadwick Boseman died. And it was like, I had to put a little preface at the beginning of it where I recorded myself being like, just to let you know, we didn't not give a shit about Chadwick, but we just didn't know because I recorded this last week. And so I don't want to do that in a sense, but I guess some of the ones that I don't do on a specific subject that are just shooting the shit, we could probably do it earlier.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually listening to one this morning. I listened to Andrew Yang's podcast, and the beginning of every single one, they say what day they're recording it. Because as he says, he's like, shit changes so much on an hour by hour basis. Heads up, we recorded this on Thursday, September 17th. So if anything happened between now and Monday morning when this episode comes out, I'm sorry for not talking about it.
Because your listeners are the first person that are going to give you shit for the fact that you got something wrong or missed something. So it's like, just to let you know, I try to say it. This is Monday. Mike and I are talking Monday, September 21st. This podcast will release September 23rd. So if something happens Monday night, Tuesday anytime during the day, or Wednesday during the day, it's because we didn't know.
They cancel college hockey tomorrow on Tuesday. That's why we didn't talk about it.
So if it happens tomorrow at noon, I'm calling you tomorrow. We're going to set this up for tomorrow.
And we'll just redo it again.
But the MackReport.com, you can follow him on Instagram, Twitter. You're still one of the guys that uses Twitter because you're a sports reporter, which some people like. I feel like it's news and sports is the only thing I get on Twitter nowadays.
Same here.
There's nothing else. There's no point on getting on there anymore. So, but the MackReport.com is where you should go. College hockey news is also where you can find Mike. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I miss you. Just be seeing you all the time. You were the one person in the press box that gave a shit about MMA too. So it was like whenever we could get in the cocky press box, I'm just like, oh, MMA, let's talk MMA.
That's what we did. I think we were watching some shows from the press box.
Because like Saturday night, and I would pull the computer up and be like, okay, it's an intermission.
What's going on?
Hurry up, tweet something out, but we gotta watch this, fight or whatever. But we'd be doing it even more now with Calvin.
Absolutely. We'd be doing it
we'd be like,
every week. There's shows every week. We would literally be doing it every single weekend.
but that's awesome. So I really appreciate you coming on. We'll get you on again. Again, like I said, at the end of the season, hopefully. I say go Riverhawks, but I guess go Warriors too.
Sure.
But I really appreciate it, Mike.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. This has been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good night or good day,
You
I
too.
should say.